Hi, Jenny. Welcome. How are you?
Hi, friend. I'm okay. I'm just in the okay place.
That is completely fine. I've been thinking about this resource that you put out into the world, the Power of Breathwork. It came out right at the launch of the COVID-19 campaign.
Yeah.
Um, and it's been such a wonderful, wonderful resource. And it sort of combines breathwork, which you've taught for us in the past, alongside writing, which you combine. And there's this in the intro, you say a couple of things that I really that really frame up the book, and also I think have invited me personally in. One of which is that you found breath work quite unexpectedly, just at the right time. And I think that's so often like we go into a depth and then we discover like a new way to unlock some part of ourselves. Can you like talk a little bit about other things that you found unexpectedly, maybe?
Ooh, an
What
unexpected question about an unexpected find. Yeah, I mean, I think that, the truth is, it's like when I'm at my worst or when I'm at the bottom of the well, which is the way I often describe just being in the shit. Some of the things that used to work don't work anymore. And then I have to find new things. And I also have to find like the will and the interest in doing anything to take care of myself. And breathwork was an example of that. I guess I had heard about it, but like not as like a standalone practice. And yeah, I was in a really rough spot. And I'm a survivor of trauma and violence from childhood through adulthood. I've always felt disconnected from my breath, from my body. So finding and trying breath work was like a big risk for me because I was like, I don't want to go breathe for 45 minutes with other strangers and like, feel what I don't want to feel. And I think those are the best kinds of practices where like we are a little hesitant maybe, and we also there's like a deeper, wiser part of us that knows like, no, this is good. You need this, even if it's hard.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's something too about growing up that way or living a life that has, where you've experienced a lot of trauma and had to figure out how to survive it, that can make release or joy feel really unsafe.
Yeah.
Right. Like that makes it feel like, I don't know, like I kind of feel most myself when I'm shitty, or I have in the past when I'm like
Yeah.
that bottom of the well. I'm like,
Yeah.
that had for a long time has been like, okay, that's my almost
Comfort zone.
my comfort zone. Right. Like it's the place where I can hang. And like, I know that nothing will change unless I change it. Right.
Yeah.
Whereas with joy, there's this thing around like, it feels so tenuous.
Yeah.
And for me, assigning language to things has been like this, it's been a method of control in some ways. And later in the introduction, you say, I've remembered that while story and language are important, leaving room for what lives beyond language in the energetics of the body is just as necessary. And yes, but also like, well, if I don't have words, like how do I sit with a thing without words? And I don't know exactly what my question is there. I love it. But I just thought it might be something interesting for us to talk a little bit about like, especially when you're writing for productivity, right? When you're writing so that you can like add another thing to your bio. Because sometimes I feel like that, right? Like, oh, I haven't published, whatever. I need to add this to my list. That allowing something to sit languageless is like, again, like really uncomfortable and And what then do you do with it?
Mm-hmm.
No, like, so there
Yeah.
it is, it's a feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you use it?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's like, it's drawing on the idea of somatics, which is like a really broad term, but also relevant in just like finding and being with the body, you know, which includes our mind, you know, like our mind is part of our body.
Mm.
So we don't have to like throw that part out of it either when we're in like a meditative space. But yeah, I mean, I similar to you, like I do think that finding language was, yeah, a little bit about control for me. And like you know, I've written since I was a child, and you know, writing and finding words for the things that felt so far beyond language has been really important to bring understanding into my life, or just like clarity, or yeah, sense of control. Like, this whole fucking thing happened and now it's on the paper, you know,
Mhm.
like it's on the page.
Right.
And that's kind of how I went into breath work, was like, it was meaningful to me to find language for all the difficult stuff that I had been through. And then when I found breath work, where it is not about language, you know, like it is about, you know, kind of letting go of the story sometimes, or being more familiar with the story. And a quick fresh refresher for people, breath work is just a meditative practice. It's a active practice where we're just using our breath in certain ways to just move beyond the story, you know, move beyond familiarity, maybe even bring some stuff back into our awareness in the interest of trying to integrate it into our fuller experience. And yeah, breath work. I mean, I still honestly, like when I do breath work, I still have a notebook nearby and I'm picking up the notebook and like
Mhm.
scrawling things down. But I think for me, I had to let go of language to really be in the practice of meditation and breath work. And so I started to realize like I actually need both of those spaces, because if I can, and you know, it's similar. I offered the Altered States writing workshop back in December with you all, and it's similar to that idea. It's like, we know the story, you know, we know that we've told the story 1,000 times. We've often used the same language for it. What happens when we break that story open a little bit and come to it in a different way?
Yeah. And take a break, right, from
Yeah,
the
take a
thing that we're
break.
telling ourselves.
Yeah,
Um, do you meditate in other ways, or is it
I
mostly breath?
do. Yeah. You know, for a long time, I was trying to do, like, I was really wanting to have a regular meditation practice when I was probably in my 20s, and I just fell asleep all the time. Like, my brain's so active. And then the idea of like trying to, you know, I think that the people I was learning from at the time maybe had a less complex understanding of what meditation is. And now that I've done it more, I'm like, oh, yeah, right. We are not turning off our brains. We can't turn off our brains. We're bringing awareness to our thinking patterns, to our stories. And so after starting breath work, which really helped engage my kind of busy mind, because you have to be so engaged with the pattern of the breath, I've been able to do, you know, sitting meditation and other kinds of meditation now.
Oh, how awesome.
Yeah.
Um, it's like this interesting thing around like witnessing, right? Like you're witnessing your brain and your mind at work. Um, but you're not asking anyone else to witness it, which is the
Yeah.
thing that's super different about when we write things down.
Yeah.
Um, and I think it's like really unplugged from something that in this moment, you know, is talking to my girlfriend this morning about like, we're even monetizing our babies, right? Like we're in this current moment, you put a shirt on your baby and you're like, and they paid me to put this shirt on my baby. And it's like, everything is about production and external witnessing. Um, and taking a break from that, I think in and of itself can be really like lonely
Mm.
in a way. Like I remember maybe a few months ago or a year ago, I turned off my social media notifications, all of them.
Mhm.
And for the first 3 days, I was like, nobody loves me. Because like nothing was happening on my phone. And just like my home screen, it was just like, there was nothing there, and I wasn't getting like constant, like,
External.
yeah, external. And oftentimes the notification is like somebody else posted something. It's not even that they love you,
Yeah, it's
right?
not even anything
Like,
cool.
not even anything like amazing. But there is this pressure to be witnessed, and to be witnessed in a particular, like whatever your particular persona
Yeah.
is, right? Like to deliver the thing that you are I don't know, creating for your audience, or whatever,
Yeah, totally.
that means. And but the best, I think, works of art are completely like just like people being weird with themselves in the on the page. How do you, so you have breath work, and you have meditation, and of course you have writing. How else do you allow yourself to be weird? What are some other places where you just like,
I mean, definitely with plants. I'm an herbalist, and I had like my first really big garden last summer, and it's like being with plants, growing plants, working with plants, and like hiking too. It's like nobody gives a fuck about me out there, like I live in northern New Mexico now after 16 years in New York City, and I'm looking out this window, and there are these cows that just walk back and forth. And, I go out there and I like wave to them every day, and they just look at me like they're like, get out of here, and I think being outside in nature, like beyond like a city or something, like there's nobody here. Like nobody cares what I'm doing. Nobody cares what I look like. Nobody cares how I do a thing. And I think, yeah, it's like pulling, like the eyes aren't there, the eyes of social media or whatever. Like I feel the eyes of social media all the time, it's like, I'm just like in my bedroom, and I'm like, it still feels like there's eyes. And so, yeah, I think being with plants lets me be weird, because it's also like, I grew plants since I was a little kid, and it's like, it's always been like a place of like freedom and connection, and just like being engaged and connected to a world that's so much bigger than me, that's so much older than me. Plants are older and wiser than all of us humans.
yeah. And the sort of like, you can't quite understand them, right? Like you can try to give them the things they need to thrive, but like, right, there's a limitation, a language block, right?
Yeah, there is. Yeah.
And I think maybe it's that they were about the same age. I think there's like something too of like, of coming to the wisdom of not knowing, as like, I don't know, I feel like in my 20s is this really big unrest. I don't know. I got to know. I got to pretend to know. I got to seem like I know, like this whole thing. And then like to relax into like, not going to know.
Have no idea. Yeah. Which I think for me has come with age, like the older I get, even though you could argue I've lived more, or I know more in the living sense, like I feel like I know less all the time. I'm just like, I got no clue. I hope someone tells me one day what the hell is going on, because I don't know.
Actually, I don't even know if someone tells me. I don't even know what I would do.
When you're like really old, maybe then.
Maybe we'll talk again in 40 years, and I'll let you know when you know, and I'll let you know if I want to know from you. What are you a daily writer? Are you like a morning pages?
No.
No, not a daily writer.
I wish I was. I'm not a daily much of anything, is what it is. It's like, I do the things on my to-do list every day. I have just this year, officially, I have really gotten into like daily movement and meditation. I had like a really serious injury a few months ago, and I was unable to walk for a few months. And the second I had more mobility, I was like, I'm going to just like, if I can do 10 minutes of moving, I'm going to do that, or 10 minutes of breathing consciously, or, but writing has always been hard for me as a daily practice. I think, I feel like I can't always find words. And then, I'm a bit of a perfectionist. I kind of like to find the right words right away. And I'm finishing up a book too that I've been working on really since like 2013. And I feel like maybe once that's done, I'll be able to get into more of a daily practice again. But that just kind of feels like it's hovering around me and pushing me in a direction I don't know I want to go yet. So
oh yeah, that thing when there's a project that you're like, well, if I'm writing, I should be writing that.
yeah. Or editing, there's so many things to do. Are you a daily writer?
I like I try to be. I'm not a daily much of anything either. Except for I am a deeply daily coffee drinker.
Cool.
But yeah, I would like, again, like I love to be able to come across like, oh, this day last year, this is what was happening for me. But I can't always access it. And I can't always pull myself away from my life.
Yeah.
To be on the page. Which is a fairly new thing for me to be able to say like, no, actually, I'm just gonna be here, drinking this coffee, looking out the window and not interrupt it with writing. And I think those breaks make the writing actually, like when I come to the page.
Who is that piece? It made me think of this piece. Blank on her name. You probably know it. It's that like short essay that's about like how everything is writing, like reading is writing, going through your day is like not writing is writing, because if you're a writer at some point you will be drawn back into writing, but everything else around it is still writing. You read that piece? I
have, and I also cannot place the name, but if anyone knows, comment and tell us. Because I'd like to reread that. But yes, like, and there's this idea of like, what am I not writing? Like what is the thing I am not writing? Because usually there's like a thing when I'm not writing, there is something, maybe not as directly like the project that I'm supposed to be working on, but like, there's like, something that I'm thinking about and I'm like, that's like just, and then it just seems to come up in every conversation, like
totally
right over the course of several days. And that feels like, oh yeah, this is, the universe is just like guiding me into this subject. But I don't get as mad at myself anymore as I used to about that. For whatever that's worth.
Yeah.
What do you get mad at yourself about?
Oh my God. So many things. I'm always in trouble. I mean, similarly, like I think I used to get mad at myself for not doing all the things every day, like, because really, if you're like listening to all the like Instagram therapists or the all the guidance in life, it's like I would have no time for anything if I'm like doing all the exercise, doing all the meditation, taking all my vitamins, and I've tried to just be like, especially in the last couple of years where everything is so hard, I'm like, yeah, I can't do that today, actually. And letting that be okay instead of then spending all kinds of energy, like punishing myself for like, or just also like getting more clear on like what I want to be doing, like maybe I had an idea for something today and I don't want to do it anymore. So yeah, I guess when I was younger, I was a lot more mad at myself. I have a lot more patience for myself now, fortunately.
That's beautiful. You, of course, moved from New York City to hanging out with the cows in New Mexico, which is like it's like another life, right? Yeah. It's a huge shift with your partner. Yeah. Which is a shift too in partnership. You're relying upon each other in a different way, right? For like,
everything.
Company,
especially rurally, everything rurally. You're like,
right. um, and there is like often when you've been independent and you've been like scrabbling to do all the things, there's a thing you have to accept that you can like, that you can trust, that you can trust that you are enough, that like this thing is enough. How did you make that giant leap?
I mean, we had a plan to potentially move from New York City a couple years down the line. Like we had traveled and did a road trip in January 2020, and we're like, New Mexico, LA both look like options. We'll see how we feel in a few years. And then the pandemic hit, and I lived in a really teeny studio. Rose lived in a pretty small space. You know, every place I led breath work, except for one, closed permanently. You know, all of my relationships that I thought were so tied to New York City, you know, a lot of them disappeared. The relationships didn't, but the spaces did.
Right.
And I started working more virtually, doing breathwork online and breathwork groups, and you know, and so for a couple months I got to see that it could work, you know, like that I had built something that was steady enough that I could take onto the internet full time. And yeah, I mean, being in New York City for the first 6 months of the pandemic was really hard. I mean, I know it's still hard. It's not like it's ended, but you know, I think that for me, I had finally just found some steadiness for like the last year or two before 2020. And I was like, I can't do it again here. I can't restart and reinvent myself in New York City yet again. You know, I needed to do something different. So we just found a house on Craigslist to rent, and Rose traded some of her carpentry skill for it. And we're just here. It does feel like a whole different new life, you know, which I think is, it's really hard some days, you know, like I really miss, like I think we all do, there's so much we miss from the before times. And I also feel like in some ways it's helpful that we're all just like out in the, you know, in the ether in something new, because I'm not doing it alone. Like I think most people I know have had to like reimagine what their lives look like. So yeah, it's a really big shift though. And I would love to say that I've like lost my New York City hardness, but I have not. I just do it here now in a town of less than 400 people, and you know,
You're just like, what are you looking at to the couch?
everyone's very nice. They're just like, why is this person moving so fast everywhere?
So I know you said you're not a daily habits or much of
Yeah.
a daily anything person, but what are the rhythms? What are the
Mm.
rhythms that sustain you?
Well, one thing I definitely have been able to do more now that I don't live in New York is I start and end my day differently, you know, like I make sure that I have time in the morning to like move slow. I am now doing more daily morning stuff like movement and meditation, and I take my herbs, and I try not to really get into like work until like 10 or 11, honestly.
Yeah,
And then
that's
I
what I
usually work until about 6. Um, and you know, I don't work at night anymore, which is a real difference. I used to work at night a lot in the city. So I would be getting home at like 10 o'clock at night after a breathwork group, which I loved doing them, but it didn't allow for me to like ease into my sleep at night. I was kind of like buzzed. So yeah, I feel like I have like morning and evening time that helps me like rest and ground a bit more than I used to. So I do feel a little bit more anchored in the day than I used to.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I think I've heard this from a lot of people, this sort of like starting the day a little bit later, like
Yeah.
taking that sort of commuting time,
Mm-hmm.
or you know what it like what we would have used to go somewhere, just like
Yeah.
reclaiming it.
Yeah.
At the beginning, using it, of course, first to just like get right into it, like we did, like, oh, I got this hour. But I do miss the that sort of like mind space of the commute.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Coming and going from work. And like, I keep thinking of things that I could do to make myself have a commute. Like, you know, my bedroom is down the hall from my office. So like, maybe I sit in the hallway for 20 minutes and read. Or like, right? Like, how do I come down from the buzz where I just like close the laptop lid and I just taught this amazing workshop and then
you just go into the living room. Yeah. Yeah.
So like this transition stuff, I think is still something that I'm like, you know, 2 years and counting in, trying to figure out. But I think that there's like, reading is a really like getting into somebody else's head. It's one of the things that I am grateful, especially for in this time of on from home. And on that, what are you reading?
Here's where my terrible name retention will come in. So I'm not going to give any names of the authors. I'm just going to talk about what's in the books. You know, over the summer, I started reading fiction again, which like, I'm a nonfiction person. I'm like nonfiction and poetry, you know, like that's mostly what I read. It's rare that I read fiction. But over the summer, I just felt like so overwhelmed by the world. I mean, for the 1200th time in the last 2 years. And
Right.
I was like, I need to read some fiction. So I just started, but of course, because I am me and you will probably relate, all of the fiction that I bought was like cult adjacent and like, and like apocalypse about like the world 3 decades from now. And like, for whatever reason, I found it comforting just to be in like an alternate reality that like might be our reality at some point or maybe already is. And I think that felt really helpful. And it also was just like, I feel like with nonfiction, which is where, you know, like I'm constantly learning and reading and trying to develop further my knowledge base and herbs and breathwork and all the things and writing, but it requires so much of my ability to like process and think. And I've really struggled with that over the last couple of years, is like for a number of reasons, health and otherwise. Like I can't retain information in the same way. So I can't always read those books. I just need to read about some person having a terrible relationship in the end times, you know, like that's where I'm just like, tell me more. How bad is it? You know? So that's been really helpful. You sent me a book, the fish book.
Oh, Why Fish Don't Exist.
I loved that one because it was also came at a really good time because I was dealing with like this injury and my dog dying at the same time, and just like really was and still am a little bit in like fuck the whole world, like fuck everything, you know, like why, and to read, you know, somebody else kind of traversing this idea of just like there's no control. We have no control, you know, like about the big things. We don't have control about the big things. I can control when I drink my tea, but you know, that's about it. And so I think books like that have been really helpful too.
Yeah, and that's such an extraordinary one. So Why Fish Don't Exist is by Lulu Miller, and it is nonfiction, but she has this like personal story that's sort of threaded through it. And the way that it's set up is there's like a mystery, right? It's like uncovering. So you're moving forward. It's a phenomenal book.
What are you reading?
I am reading, I have a couple of new things that I'm reading. One is this, it just arrived. I have an essay in this anthology, but like, it's called Sex and the Single Woman.
Ooh.
And it's like all of these phenomenal authors up on sex. And it's like a redo of the Helen Gurley Brown sort of like old bestseller that was like a little questionable. Like How to Catch a Man really was what it was about. This is like all of these authors on this topic of singlehood and singledom and sex and self, right? Really, it's about self. So these other essays in it are just so phenomenal. Cool. And then I'm also reading, I really love the best American science writing
Mm.
every year. And I just like, it's that thing where I'm just like, oh, now I know all of this about whales. And like, it just like,
cool facts at the
yeah,
masked
I
party.
just can't stop talking about whale facts. And people are like, "We don't stop." So those are two things that I'm reading, but I'm also like a person that always is reading like a little bit from little things all over, and also had like a weird education. So I'm like often rereading things that people read in some class somewhere.
Totally.
And they're like, oh, of course you've read that. And I'm like, fuck, I have to, like, I'm just ordering it on my phone. Like, smart person, I read that already. So reading some of those things. And I just got a subscription to the Paris Review. So I'm like way
You're
in that.
stocked. Yeah.
I'm stocked. I'm just like sitting in the hallway between my bedroom and my office, just like
Wasting the day away. Just
really getting it. Really getting it over there. We're so grateful for you.
I love being in the CBAW Zoom room.
It's such a great thing to be allowed to be like messy and show up. And like even I as a facilitator, I'm allowed to be messy and show up from wherever and however, and the whole room carries me. And like I think that's that speaks to like the facilitators that we have, like yourself, and like all these extraordinary people that like just come as themselves. And I think to the time that we live in.
Yeah. I mean, there's no, if you're not messy, I don't want to know you right now. I'm like, come on. Come on. The facade's not working for me,
Yep.
It's a mess out there, and inside and outside, and up here too. Up here.